The storm howled like a wounded beast as it tore across the plains of Calaver, slamming into the shattered outpost where a girl lay half buried in mud and snow. Her limbs were tied with frayed plasma rope, her face bruised, her eyes swollen. Shut. A giant alien beast groaned beside her, its scaled body riddled with scorch marks. Its breathing was slow, but it still lived. And they were tied together, wrist to claw. Liara hadn't spoken in 2 days. Her throat was too dry, her lips cracked. She wasn't sure what was worse, the freezing wind, or the smell of the dying beast beside her. It had once been her tormentor, forced on her by cruel hands. Then it had become her shield. And now, both of them were left to die in the open wasteland where no one dared to walk. Lightning cracked across the sky, lighting up the ruins around her. Metal poles stuck out like bones. The war had ended a week ago, but for Liara, it hadn't ended at all. Her people had fled. Her captors had abandoned her. And now even death seemed too slow. She turned her head weakly, trying to loosen the rope. The monster groaned. It had fought them once. Then it had defended her. No one knew why. Maybe it had gone mad. Or maybe something inside it had changed. Either way, they were both discarded like trash, left to rot in the storm. Far in the distance, a shape appeared. At first, she thought it was another hallucination. She'd had many. A blue flower blooming in metal. A child with 3 arms offering water. A song made of starlight. But this shape moved against the wind. It didn't drift or flicker. It walked, step by step. The figure came closer. A long coat flapped behind it. The storm pulled at its body, but it didn't fall. It carried something over its back, long, heavy. A weapon, maybe. She squinted harder. It wasn't another alien. It was human, one of the Earthborn. The same species that had burned half the world during the siege. The same people who had vanished when the tides turned. Her heart beat harder, not from hope. From fear, the human kept walking. Snow crunched under boots. When he reached the edge of the crater, he stopped. His eyes scanned the wreckage until they landed on her and the beast. He didn't speak, just stared, for too long. Then, without a word, he stepped down into the crater. Liara tried to move. Her body refused. She wanted to shout at him, tell him to run. The beast still breathed. And she didn't know if it was still safe. But the man didn't seem afraid. He knelt beside her, his breath visible in the cold air. "Can you move?" he asked, his voice low and steady. She blinked slowly, then shook her head. He looked at the beast. Its golden eye rolled toward him but didn't lunge. It just lay still, watching. The man pulled a small tool from his belt and began slicing through the plasma ropes. His hands were quick, careful. He checked her pulse, gave her a small canteen. It smelled like real water. "I thought I was the last one here," he said softly. "Guess I was wrong." He glanced at the beast. "Did it hurt you?" Liara hesitated, then shook her head again. "Good, then it gets to live for now." She wanted to ask who he was, why he had come, but her voice failed her. All she could do was watch as he lifted her gently into his arms. The beast tried to rise too, but collapsed. The man sighed and crouched beside it. "I'll come back for you," he said. "If you don't die first." He carried her through the storm, step by step, back the way he had come. Her body rested against his chest. His heartbeat was steady, strong. Not once did he stumble. Not once did he complain. He was just a man, but to her, he felt like a whole army, and for the first time in 10 days, she let herself close her eyes, not from pain, but from safety. Rain tapped against the rusted roof of the small shelter. Inside, the dim lights buzzed. Quietly, Liara lay wrapped in a thermal blanket on a fold-out bed, still too weak to sit up. Her bruises were fading. Her skin no longer burned with cold. But she had not yet spoken. The man moved about the room, focused. He poured hot liquid into a metal cup and placed it beside her. His face was sharp and quiet. Not cruel, not soft either. His movements were precise, like someone used to being alone. A soldier maybe. Or something worse, he had said his name only once, Kale. Then he returned to his silence. Leora shifted and finally forced a whisper from her throat. Why? Kale didn't look up right away. He kept stirring the pot over the portable burner. Then he said, because I saw someone who wasn't dead yet. That's not a reason, she murmured. It's reason enough, he said simply. She coughed and tried to sit up. Her arms trembled. He was beside her in a second, helping her upright, then placing a pillow behind her back. She watched him carefully. His eyes held no interest in her body, no hunger, no fear, just focus. Duty, Leora didn't know what to make of it. She had been dragged across the plains by a leash, tied to a beast that had almost crushed her skull. Her own people had sold her. The enemy left her. And this stranger, this human had walked into a death storm to pick up what everyone else threw away. You weren't part of the war? She asked. No, missed it, he said. Was on a deep mine crew off-world. Got back too late. Found this place already in pieces. She frowned. So why are you still here? Kale stared at the wall for a moment, looking for something. She waited, but he didn't say what. She wanted to ask more, but her strength was gone again. Her head dropped to the side. She felt the warmth of the blanket and the strange comfort of his presence. Her eyelids closed. She woke later to the sound of the door opening. Kale stepped back inside, covered in ash and wind. And behind him, dragging its wounded body with slow but determined limbs, was the beast. Leora's breath caught. She shrank back, but Kale raised a calming hand. It followed my trail, he said. 1/2 kilometer. Didn't attack. Didn't growl. It just came. She stared at the creature as it collapsed near the door, its body shaking. It didn't even look at her. It just lay down, breathing heavy, as if being near them was enough. Kale crouched beside it, inspecting its wounds. You called it a monster, he said without looking at her. But monsters don't protect their prisoners. She didn't know how to reply. Maybe it had been trained. Maybe it had gone rogue. Or maybe something in that terrible week, something in pain, in fear, in shared suffering, had changed the beast too. What do we do with it? She asked. Kale opened a medkit. We keep it alive, Leora blinked. Why? Because I don't kill things that ask to live, he said. That the beast lifted its golden eye and looked at Kale. There was no hate in it. No rage, only silence. And in that silence, something shifted. In this broken world where war had turned heroes to ashes and friends to betrayers, a human and a beast sat under the same roof, not as enemies, not as masters and slaves, but as survivors. And Leora, for the first time in her life, didn't feel like prey. Leora sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. Her legs were still weak, but her mind was sharp again. The warm air inside the shelter no longer felt like a dream. Kale moved around the room, checking supplies, fixing cables, replacing the power cell. He worked like someone used to being alone for too long. The beast, now laying beside the heater, let out a soft huff. Its wounds were healing slowly. Kale had stitched its torn muscles and wrapped its front leg. Leora had never seen anyone treat such a creature like it mattered. She asked, You've done this before? Kale paused. Patched things up? Yeah, worked with miners. And once with deep-sea lifters on Galranine. You get used to strange partners. But not beasts like this. He looked at the creature. No, this one's special. Leora glanced at the golden eye of the beast. It was watching them, not like a predator. Like a listener. She lowered her gaze. Its name was Curse. That's what they called it. Kale raised an eyebrow. Nice name for a pet. It wasn't a pet. It was punishment. They tied prisoners to it, made it drag them. If you lived, you were cleansed. If not, they said the beast made judgment. He said nothing, just clenched his jaw. Then he walked over to the beast and stared into its eye. You were just doing what they made you do, weren't you? Kale whispered. The beast didn't move, just blinked slowly. That night, wind screamed across the hills again. But the storm was far now. Leora sat beside the fire. She had eaten real food soup with real herbs, not synth paste. Her stomach was full for the first time in weeks. Kale was cleaning a small scanner, checking for radio signals. It had been silent since he arrived. Leora asked, "You're not going to turn me in?" Kale didn't look up. "Should I? I'm technically enemy. I didn't fight in the war. I don't care what uniform you wore. You're just a girl who nearly died in the snow." Leora looked down at her hands. "I killed people. So did I doesn't mean we stop being people." His words hit like a stone in her chest. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not even before the war. Not even when she was still free. She looked up at him. "Why are you really here, Kale?" He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "I lost someone. A long time ago. She sent a signal before she vanished. Said she found something buried in Kaliver, something important. I came back to find it. What did she find? I don't know. But whatever it was, they erased it. Every report. Every log. Burned it all." Leora's eyes narrowed. "My camp had rumors that prisoners were being experimented on with old tech. Forbidden's tech. Things from before the collapse." He nodded slowly. "Then that's what she saw." Silence filled the room again. Outside, the night was quiet. Too quiet. Leora suddenly stood. Her ears perked. Kale grabbed his rifle. The beast rose too, growling low. Then it came a soft hum. A distant engine. Not wind, not storm. A flyer, military, and it was heading toward them fast. Kale swore, "Get down, don't let them see you." But it was too late. The spotlight cut through the dark and landed right on the shelter. The beast roared and leapt in front of Leora. Kale raised his weapon, eyes scanning the sky. The war was over, but trouble had just found them again. The spotlight burned down like a second sun. Snow and dust swirled in its beam. The flyer hovered just above the ridge, its engines whirring low and hungry. Kale stepped in front of Leora, one hand shielding her, the other gripping his rifle. The beast crouched beside them, its shoulders rising, a low growl rumbling through its chest. It didn't try to run. It didn't cower. It waited for Kale's command. A voice boomed from the flyer's speaker. "You have 10 seconds to surrender the fugitive, or we open fire." Kale didn't move. His mind raced. The flyer wasn't human-made. The shape, the color, the markings, it belonged to the Garen Guard, Leora's own people. But something was off. Too clean, too fast. He stepped toward the open air and shouted back, "She's injured, she's no threat." "You've been warned," the voice snapped. Kale pulled Leora into the shelter and slammed a button on the wall. Metal panels dropped down like shutters. The light vanished, and the world turned red inside from emergency lamps. Leora shook her head weakly. "They found me. They always find me." "Let them try," Kale muttered, loading a second magazine. The beast paced near the wall, snarling. It knew what was coming. It could smell the violence. It scratched at the ground like it wanted to charge. Then the first shot hit. A sonic round exploded against the roof, shaking the whole building. Another hit the door. Kale rolled toward the corner, grabbed a small launch pod, and cracked it open. Inside were 2 canisters marked fog. He tossed them through a side vent. White smoke burst outside, thick and fast. It covered the entrance, billowing into the sky. The spotlight flickered and tried to track movement, but the smoke was too dense. "Move!" Kale grabbed Leora, lifting her onto the beast's back. The creature didn't resist. It lowered itself, letting her climb on easily. "You trust it?" he asked. She nodded. "It never let me fall." Kale opened a side hatch and jumped out first, rifle raised. The beast followed, Liara clinging to its back. The three of them disappeared into the fog as the flyer fired blindly into the stormy night. They moved fast. The beast ran with surprising strength. Kale kept to the left, using rocks as cover. Bullets ripped through the smoke behind them, but none found their mark. Within minutes, the hills swallowed them. By the time the fog cleared, the shelter was empty. No bodies, no heat signals. Just a burned bed and the last remains of a cracked canteen. Far from the chaos, in a deep ravine, Kale lit a small flame. Inside a cave, the beast lay down with a heavy sigh. Liara slid off its back and collapsed beside the wall. Her face was pale, but she was smiling. "They didn't get me," she whispered. "No," Kale said. "But they're not done. They won't stop. Not until you're back in chains." "Then we don't stop either," she said. Kale looked at her for a long moment. "We need to find what your people were hiding. That's the only way this ends." Liara nodded slowly. "Then we go where they buried it." "Where?" She took a shaky breath. "The silent pit. It's where they dragged prisoners to disappear." Kale looked out into the night. The wind had calmed, but something deeper stirred. Now something buried, waiting to rise. The journey to the silent pit began before sunrise. Cold mist clung to the rocks, and the world was quiet like it was holding its breath. Kale packed fast, minimal gear, no signal devices. They were being hunted now. Liara rode the beast again. It moved slower than before, favoring one leg, but it didn't stop. Every time it stumbled, it forced itself forward. Kale walked beside it, rifle on his back, eyes scanning every ridge. There was no turning back. The silent pit wasn't marked on any map. It was a place only spoken about in fear. Liara had heard the guards whisper its name, always with lowered voices. If she screams again, send her to the pit. He didn't break. Pit him. Nobody returned. Not even the guards who worked there. By midday, they reached a dead forest. The trees were petrified, frozen in twisted shapes. Bones stuck out from the dirt like roots. Kale paused near a rusted sign, barely readable. One word still glowed faintly. "In alien script, quarantine. This it?" Kale asked. Liara nodded. Her fingers trembled. "Yes, we go down from here." They found the edge of the pit at the bottom of a cliff. It wasn't just a hole. It was a wound in the earth, black, cracked and deep. Cables ran into it, long severed. Machines half buried in stone surrounded the edge. Warning lights blinked weakly, still alive after all these years. Kale tested the air. "Toxic levels below 500 meters will need masks." He gave one to Liara and fastened his own. Then he turned to the beast. "You staying?" The creature looked into the hole, then back at Kale. It stepped forward and sat at the edge, watching like a guardian. It would not go down, but it would wait. They descended by rope, using rusted rails as support. The further they dropped, the colder it became. Liara's breath grew shallow. Kale's light flickered across strange metal doors, some dented from inside. The deeper they went, the more it felt like the pit itself was breathing. Finally, they reached the floor. The ground was soft ash. Burned documents, melted screens, shattered tools. Kale crouched and picked up a fragment of a badge. His eyes narrowed. "This was Earth tech," he said. Liara looked around. "They told us it was alien, ancient. But this, it's human." They moved through a broken gate and found a sealed room behind metal glass. Inside, a stasis pod blinked weakly. A figure floated inside, humanoid, but wrong. The limbs were too long. The skull was too smooth. Liara stepped back. "What is that?" she whispered. Kale tapped the side of the glass. "Bioengineered, hybrid tech. This is what they were hiding. Why? Leora asked. Kale's voice dropped. Because if it wakes up, everything changes. A console sparked nearby. Kale forced it open. A log activated, holographic and shaky. A woman appeared. Pale skin, Earth uniform. This is Commander Lyra Frost. She said, Project Echo is unstable. The host has adapted beyond control. If anyone finds this, shut it down. Do not let them take it. The recording cut. Silence returned. Kale looked at Leora. That's who I came to find, he said. My sister. Leora's mouth opened, but no sound came. She stared at him. Stunned. She was here? He nodded. She died trying to stop this. Suddenly, alarms flickered red. A sensor had tripped above. Someone else was descending into the pit. Kale stepped in front of Leora. They followed us. Footsteps echoed through the upper shafts. Time to end this, Kale said. He handed her a second weapon. She took it without fear. Together, they turned to face the stairwell. They would protect the secret and each other. The red lights pulsed across the pit walls like a heartbeat. Kale crouched beside the bulkhead, weapon ready. Leora stood behind him, gripping the plasma pistol tightly. The shadows above shifted, metal boots echoed against the stone. 3, maybe 4 figures. The beast above growled once. Then came a gunshot and silence. Leora's heart twisted. She wanted to scream, but Kale touched her arm gently. Don't break. We finish this. The figures descended quickly, armed, masked, silent. They weren't soldiers, they were hunters, private. Ruthless, the kind who didn't speak unless paid. They reached the lower chamber and split apart, surrounding the room. Kale opened fire first. A burst of blue light lit the ash. One merc dropped. Another returned fire, missing by inches. Leora ducked behind a steel beam, waited for the right moment, then fired at the nearest enemy. The shot hit clean. She didn't even hesitate. Smoke filled the corridor. Sparks rained down. The final merc stepped forward with a heavy shield, blocking Kale's shots. He raised a charged spear. Leora rolled across the ground, slammed her pistol against the shield's edge, and fired into the gap in his armor. He fell. Hard. Then it was quiet again. Kale rushed to the pod. It was starting to hum. The hybrid inside shifted. Its eyes blinked. Leora ran to the console. It's waking up. What do we do? Kale's jaw clenched. We end it. My sister died trying to stop this. It doesn't leave this pit. Leora nodded. Do it. He pulled the last fusion core from his belt, twisted it, and jammed it into the pod's core. The alarms screamed. Lights turned from red to white. A countdown began, silent but final. They ran up the shaft. Past the bones. Past the broken tech. The smoke followed them like a shadow. Kale pushed Leora ahead, shouting, Faster! When they reached the surface, the light of dawn broke over the hills. And standing at the edge, bloodied but breathing, was the beast. It limped toward them, nuzzled Leora's side gently, then turned its golden eye down toward the pit. Behind them, a deep rumble grew. Then the ground shook and fire burst from the mouth of the pit. The silent pit collapsed in on itself, burying everything beneath. The project, the pod, the dead. Everything was gone. Kale fell to his knees, exhausted. Leora stood beside him, hair tangled, eyes burning with life. She turned to the beast, stroked its snout. You waited, she whispered. It made no sound, just rested beside her. A protector. A survivor. Later, they walked toward the far valley together. No more chains, no more running. Kale beside her. The beast behind them. And the sky above finally clear. They hadn't just destroyed a weapon. They had buried the past. And for the first time in their broken world, they stepped forward free.